Hello, and welcome to the Blog Solid podcast, where we talk about the evolution of the property market, the newest technologies that enhance and revolutionize the world of real estate as we know it, and how we, the owners, the buyers, the renters, the investors, and the entrepreneurs can benefit from it all. I'm Yael Tamar, CMO and co-founder at Solid Blog, pioneer in real estate tokenization, and today I'd like to welcome a very special guest and a friend, Mohammed Mahfoudh. Hi, Mohammed. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you very much.
Really happy to see you again, after we've been to Dubai. I happened to be there 3 times in the last month. So yeah, probably last time for a while, but we'll see you soon after we beat COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure seeing you after been interacting with you for some time before.
Yeah.
It was nice meeting you in person, so it's a pleasure.
Yeah, for me too. So let me give you a few words about Mohammed as an extensive bio. So Mohammed has been working mostly throughout his career in startups, either setting them up or advising them, or for an extended period of time, he was an angel investor, advisor, and mentor to over 100 startups out of Europe, with exits mostly in the US. Now, Mohammed has also taken a few positions with the government and the corporate sector in companies such as SAP and PWC, and a range of local and international companies in UAE and Europe. He's been involved in different industries from management and investment perspectives, such as legal, real estate, healthcare, and aviation. He had over a decade investment and advising positions in 100 companies, mostly in Europe, and managed to be involved in 35 exits. The focus was mostly early stage and seed investments in various sectors. He had also been involved in various regions, including Latin America and Australia. Now, the coolest thing about Mohammed, in my eyes, because I'm from the blockchain industry, is that he actually came to blockchain in 2014, right? That's pretty early. That's pretty much when the world of crypto realized you can do other stuff with blockchain than just crypto. Now, initially, he got involved with mining and investment, and eventually as an advisor to various ICOs. During 2018, and as the ICO market declined, he saw an opportunity in the asset-backed tokens and the emergence of security tokens, which led him to start DECA4 to become a global player in providing consultancy, advisory, project management, and research to the industry to help navigate the complexity of the tokenization ecosystem. Mohammed still holds few investments in some of the ICOs and various blockchain and fintech startups, among other industries. So, Mohammed, welcome to Block Solid. I think you'll fit right in because, your company and our company are engaged in very complementary activities. And I'm happy to talk to you today about how blockchain is changing real estate or just changing investment in general.
Thank you. Thanks for the very generous introduction. One of the things, because it's relevant, one of the companies I started in 2000, a company in Dubai, which was the first real estate cloud software, had a very good success building a cloud, when the cloud term was not there early on in the technology and in the real estate, just because of the relevance here. I've been in the real estate technology for a very long time.
Very cool. And how did that cloud software change the industry?
2001, 2002, the real estate market in Dubai just exploded. And the country changed the regulation allowing foreign ownership of properties. And that just created a massive industry. And we were there at the heart of it. So people wanted solutions, and having a cloud-based made perfect sense. They don't need any IT infrastructure. So basically, we looked at it from a business need, and our assumptions actually worked. So most of the real estate projects, or not most of them, but a good number of them in Dubai and then later on in the region, utilized our systems. So we created kind of a revolution in the, using technology within the real estate, because real estate is one of the industries that's not very efficient, unfortunately.
Yeah, traditionally.
Unfortunately, again,
Fortunately for the entrepreneurs, yeah.
So yeah, it was a major impact. We later on created things with the government, to automate the real estate industry. It was quite an experience, to be honest.
That's really cool. You kind of leapfrogged even, right? So throughout this technological revolution of just getting new industries onto into the digital form, right? In digital format, real estate being one of the most traditional and a little bit outdated industries out there. So you guys just basically skipped this step of IT and heavy hardware servers and stuff like that and just moved it straight into the cloud. I love it. That's
Absolutely.
fantastic. Yeah, we're doing a lot of that now with tokenization, aren't we?
Absolutely. It's the same thing that I see, like when we started with the cloud or using the internet to deliver a business application early on during the early time of the internet. I see the same thing with the tokenization. I know many people don't see it. It's very difficult to put the pieces together, but I think we and you guys see that, and that's why we are into this industry right now.
Right, exactly. So I'm very impressed that you've been in this industry since 2014. What first brought you into the crypto and blockchain industry back then?
Well, it's mainly because at that time I was advising investors in Europe. Mostly investors from the Middle East who would invest in Europe, and then we exit in the US. That was a brief of our model. Although we had lots of investors from Europe, and we came across opportunities in the mining. And because of my technical background, it was quite interesting, and in it in few investment and participated in setting up few entities. Most of them are not around now, but just get us the flavor and doing that. In 2015 or 16, I can't remember now exactly, we also invested in an exchange, crypto exchange, at the early time, which was very strange because there was nothing back then, or very small, especially in Europe. So
Mhm.
that also looking at the technology, how exciting it is, and we exited, but that exchange is still there. So that got me to dive deeper into the blockchain and the crypto and understanding how it works. With the many other things, we used to invest mostly in technology companies, not always blockchain. I mean, only few were in the blockchain, so we had busy doing other things. But that always stayed in my mind like a very exciting thing, and I could see a potential of growth to that industry. So that's the beginning of it.
That's really cool. And I like the fact that you have this computer science background, the technical background, and business background. In fact, that's what I've seen in the most successful CEOs out there, Elon Musk and many others that succeeded, Bill Gates, everybody who kind of has this technical side, but also has a business acumen. So I think that's why you're so successful in understanding this industry.
I hope to be as successful as they are. I mean, these guys decided not to continue with the colleges, so I don't know. Maybe
I know, right?
he made it having few degrees. So yeah, I have a business and actually electrical engineering and computer science. The technical background does help, of course, as coming from the computer science, understanding not only the coding or programming, but understanding the theories behind all kind of concepts, including distributed computing. When I was studying, that was one of the key areas that we're looking into it. And then, we're going to decentralization, and it's quite an interesting from the technology perspective, and it does definitely help if there is an understanding. It's not necessarily, I see lots of very smart people in the blockchain industry who don't come from computer science background, but for me, it was very useful, very helpful. And it is good to do something that, number one, you understand, or at least you try, you have the basic foundation to understand it, and it's very enjoyable from that area as well. So that makes it much more exciting to work into this.
Very cool, very cool. So you've done a lot of work with governments in terms of paving the way for investment in digital assets. What are some of the biggest hurdles that you've encountered?
Well, the biggest, I mean, I've done many things, not only in the digital assets. So even when we did the real estate, I was involved in the healthcare ecosystem. So we always have a similar problem. Number one is the ecosystem. So you have, like, for anything to succeed, there are many parties. And we are blessed because the government is not like what many people think. In the UAE, the government is more advanced than the private sector and more progressive in their interest. However, for the government regulation to succeed, like in the digital asset or any other regulation, the private sector has to pick. Now, the private sectors are very conservative in our part of the world, so they're always afraid and they want the government to do everything so that reduce the risk. So if we get now with the latest changes, especially in 2020, having all kind of agreements and changing some of the regulation, inviting other people to come who have that appetite of taking a risk. So if we mix that private companies' appetite to take a risk with the UAE government willingness to adopt, I think UAE has a very huge potential to take advantages. Most of the hurdles we have seen is from the ecosystem. There is a lack of serious funding in certain and any new thing. It's not only the regulation; you need to do it to test it. So there is like that. And of course, I think we have a problem that the whole world is having. The biggest hurdle is with the banks still. So I mean, the regulations are getting better and better. And the fact that UAE created the security token loan early November, it's really quite a step in that direction. We're waiting now for the central bank and the banking sector to pick up. And once that is done, and then the private sector to be more courageous and do something, believe in the government and work with them, I think UAE has a very good position to do something with that on that direction.
Yeah. Well, there's actually one more way to encourage the private sector to invest, and Israel has done it in early 80s, and that's why we're now called the Startup Nation. And I think that's probably one of the reasons, well, many reasons why there's now a peace agreement between UAE and Israel, right? So, which, by the way, another topic we probably should mention. And that's why we're in the UAE and enjoying all of the new partnerships that we've created in Solid Block. So what our government here did in Israel in the 80s is created a unique ecosystem where, first of all, the government announced investment in the industry and startups could apply. It's a chief scientist program and innovation authority program that still exists till this day. That was one step. The second step was encouraging foreign corporations to come to the region with some tax breaks, which actually UAE has done brilliantly, and I think that's something that Israel can learn from. And but the third step, which I think they could implement in the UAE, is basically government co-investment with foreign entities. When foreign companies or VCs come and invest in local startups, that program basically guaranteed co-investment from the government. So it's basically getting 1+1 type of deal, and a lot of VCs came. So pretty much every single VC is operating now in the Israeli ecosystem. We have the top number of startups on NASDAQ after US and Canada. So I think UAE has this enormous potential because I've seen a lot of hubs, especially with fintech, which we're a part, but I've seen a lot of initiatives. What do you think, Mohammed, is going to happen to the local tech industry? Is it going to explode, or where is it going to go in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's already exploding. So when I did my company like in 2000, the market, of course, the concept of investing in technology company, as you can imagine, my line of business doesn't make profit quickly. So it's a concept of scalability. These concepts are difficult. Were very difficult back then. One of the reasons I decided to work mostly in Europe, but then in the last 10 years, and especially in, let's say, the last 3 to 5 years, there is a huge growth in this technology, and the UAE and Saudi Arabia in particular. And then you have other countries like Egypt, Jordan. But UAE and Saudi Arabia are leading the way in the technology innovation, the startup, high growth, multi rounds of funding. These concepts were not there. We're having difficulty. If you raise money, you have to raise it one time. If you raise it again, then you've done something wrong. So now people are aware of the multiple rounds. They are aware of different instruments like convertible notes or safe agreements, syndication of funds. There are lots of angel networks that are operating. So things are doing well. UAE raised about $400 million for startups in 2019.
That's good.
It's still a small money, but it's a growing for a small market. Now, just one thing I want to say, because always people come and assume that the government is not pushing. I can tell you the government here in UAE is leading. I mean, it's the only one right now who are aggressively investing in startups with their technology, lots of government initiatives, lots of things like telling people come and operate, and they are easy to negotiate with.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing I see it here is the local community is not very progressive.
Mohammed, since you're from the region, I heard very exciting things happening, like the cryptocurrency initiative between the UAE and Saudi Arabia, right? Aber, and a few more. So, can you speak a little bit about what's going on and what are the goals of these new initiatives?
That's an interesting thing. See, in UAE, number one, I'll touch a little bit on the government initiative to move toward blockchain. So UAE government a few years ago made an initiative that all government services will move toward blockchain in an incremental basis. Already now, most of the government initiatives are, most of the government departments are already they having some sort of their services on blockchain. Some of them under POC concept, and some are actually being implemented. Two interesting aspects from my perspective, at least, and related to what I think will impact the security token is the central bank cryptocurrency that was created to help the governments of UAE and Saudi Arabia to transact and do whatever governmental services and settlement in an easier way. And we all understand the benefit of the cryptocurrency or central bank based cryptocurrency. So that is already has been launched. And of course, it's going to go through the implementation in the next few months and years. And the other one is the UAE is moving toward a very decentralized and blockchain-based identity management, where now you can have, one device like your mobile that is linked to your identity management, which then you can use it to activate services currently in the government departments. But I can imagine that will help later on to activate services for the private sector, maybe enabling a wallet-based KYC or all kind of things on that front. So it's quite an interesting progress.
That's very, very cool. So the goal of these initiatives is basically to, make the lives of the residents easier, and also probably make the role of the government easier, right? To
Yeah,
provide,
absolutely.
to provide
Absolutely.
best.
I mean, the saving is high once they do, even just using blockchain for like document archiving and management. They're expecting to have a saving over $1 billion per year. That's yeah. I mean, it's a huge waste, as you know, government spend on paper and transactions, and UAE is getting more and more efficient and more paperless.
Mhm.
And the trend is to go toward the blockchain. And then, of course, if we bringing the cryptos and the tokenization, all of these things, I mean, there is a nice mix that is being prepared that will enable such an industry.
That's awesome. So let's talk a bit about tokenization, since this is your expertise and also my expertise. And I think I was very excited when you signed up for my Tokenization 101 course. And I wanted to understand your point of view on where this industry is going, whether it's rolling out in a timely manner or lagging behind different expectations and predictions, and why you think tokenization is good for real estate.
Well, I mean, tokenization is good for many things. Definitely, real estate, I think, will be one of the top industries benefiting from tokenization. As reach in our industry, tokenization, and indeed, it will create that liquidity. It takes time. Anything that needs development does take time. People sometimes are in a hurry, but years will pass by quickly. And the idea is to really put the foundation now. Real estate is a very liquid, as everybody knows, and even the liquidity part of it is very challenging. The size of the tickets is too big, and there are lots of initiatives that were there before to fractionalize, the real estate without the technology, and it was difficult to manage. Saudi Arabia has a concept of doing that manually, but it's just so difficult to manage, and there are lots of code. So the tokenization bring concepts that are not really foreign for many people. I mean, people think that fractional ownership is like very unique. No, it isn't. Just making it easier and manageable and with less fraud to protect the people. Real estate definitely will be one of the industries to benefit from. Number one, because of the industry is liquid, the ticket sizes are big, so reducing it. And this is touching everybody, everyone, no matter what you are, you have something to do with real estate. It's so easy for people to relate to, and people want to have a part of it. If I cannot buy my apartment fully, I would like to have a part of it. So it's, these kind of concepts will happen, and the tool will be there. Are we going there in a good direction? Absolutely. I think we're going faster than what I personally anticipated. Like I was nicely surprised when the UAE issued the regulation in November about the security tokens. Things do take time. I've worked in implementing statewide initiatives, for example. It does take time. It's a very complex process. And this is a global, industry. So it will take time. It's moving very well. The tokens that are properly structured, the underlying asset is good. They're performing. Many things are failing because the underlying asset doesn't make sense. So it doesn't matter whether it's a token or any normal way. It won't work either way. But anything that is really the asset is proper and good, the structure is good, all the efforts, including the marketing, are done properly, we see a very good success. And I think it will be even more and more on that direction.
In your opinion, Mohammed, does tokenization provide extra protections for the investors?
Yes. Number one, the inherent functionality of the blockchain, the tokens secured and unique. So, the double spend, which is in our case, it cannot be duplicated, which is very crucial for security or any legal tender. So from that element, there is a very good, reasonable protection. Now, what we want to see is government to accept it as a legal tender. And that is happening. So now, like in Dubai, for example, the IFC court, which is an international jurisdiction, they look into smart contracts. So for mainstream jurisdictions to accept the token and the smart contract as a legal tender, that's the next step. And it's already happening in isolated cases in different places, including UAE. So it's a discussion with the regulators. And that will really give a very strong protection. But as of now, it's already a better method to register the equity or any asset compared to the standard technology because it has an inherited secured approach to protection of the investors.
I agree with you 100%, Mohammed, on that. Now, when I was in Dubai, I saw a lot of interest and love for Ripple and for XRP. And, the company was moving there and a lot of interesting events were happening. Now, crypto and, Ripple is in the news again in the headlines this week with the SEC's charges against Ripple. Right. What is the fallout going to be if those charges are actually brought forward? And what do you think about that?
Well, as most of the people in the industry, we have the issues with Ripple, not of anything, but because of there is no real use case. So, I mean, so Ripple is, and again, I usually don't like to have opinion on these things, but Ripple is more of a bubble. So, any noise, I think it will deflate it. It could go up and down. From my personal perspective, I don't touch it as it's not something that, I think it's as important or we want to be involved in. I believe strongly that the underlying asset, the use case, it has to make sense. It's not like just to create something that will go in price, 1,000% and then collapse tomorrow. We are in an industry that the growth is single digit or small growth, like 6, 7%, 10%. Our investors, if they get a return of 6 to 7% in a structured way, it's better than 1,000% that you have no understanding why it works. So we are in the security token. We believe strongly on the asset, the utilization. The token has to make sense. And that's to me to be fair, to be clear with the investors. So Ripple is an example of I don't know what they do and what's their token, what does it mean? And this SEC is definitely gonna and as we have seen already, exchanges are delisting XRP, and what will happen? Most probably gonna deflate and disappear, or might pick up again. I honestly do not know.
I think this is a perfect example of what you just mentioned, the fact that you need to have substance behind assets and you need to provide investors with value. So if somebody's investing, in an asset with the purpose of making money and this is a security clearly, and they need to understand and the underlying asset needs to make sense. And that's why we're in this industry as well. So I think this is a fantastic point that you're making. So, since you're in this industry, Mohammed, for a while now, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the most interesting use cases of tokenization that you've seen?
So far, we've working with companies, so it's equity tokenization so far, and I see a lot of demand on that. That's from where we are. I know from the market there is a lot of bonds tokenization, especially for the bigger, let's say the institutional, the banks. Now, from our company and what we're seeing is mostly equity for companies that are very innovative, and we work on different jurisdictions, US, UK, Latin America, and different industry, biomed, food, tech, and different things. So it's not like blockchain or anything. And now we are seeing, especially in our region, a demand for real estate. So I think outside of our company, real estate is going to be the leading in the private sector. And I think bonds will be the leading in the banking and the financial institutes. And then there will be a high demand on equity tokenization, especially for startups and technology innovation in any industry, because that will allow them to access funding across, cross borders. And there is a trend, if you notice now, people are moving away from VCs, because of the regulation that and the agreements with the VCs. The crowdfunding is growing, and I think crowdfunding will converge with tokenization, because if I'm a crowdfunding platform, you just use tokenization makes more sense, even with the regulation of crowdfunding. So I think the crowdfunding will converge into tokenization, equity investment, especially startup, is something very big. And then the real estate, definitely. And the private banking, I think they will go to the bonds tokenization.
That's really cool. I agree with you, Mohammed, about the crowdfunding. In the US, we have some really interesting regulations like CF that's now going up in from 1 million to 5 million that you can raise from the public. And Reg A Plus, of course, where you can raise up to 75 million. So I think it's becoming more and more interesting. And actually, Solid Block, I believe, will be the first company to list a real estate project, tokenized real estate project on a crowdfunding platform in the US. So I'm very excited about that. It's something that we're going to announce next week. Of course, we'll be happy to do the same in the UAE. We're in talks with a few exchanges there that will allow us to kind of piggyback off the regulation. So I think this space is definitely moving towards democratization, and tokenization is one of the ways that we can connect different regions, different exchanges, different pools of liquidity and pools of capital. So it's very, very exciting. But I wanted to ask you, Mohammed, what is the main advantage of tokenization for equity companies, for startups?
Number one, see the biggest problem. Let's start with the problem that they start. Like my background is angel investment, and I have lots of small equity and lots of companies. It's very illiquid. So I was like, sometimes I wake up like I wish these were tokens. And even if there is no liquidity and the exchanges, it's better than zero liquidity. There is a potential liquidity. So, my investment is stuck and I don't know for how long, I have to wait for an exit. We used to drive the exit now that I'm not very involved. So I have to depend on the company to do that exit. So that is one of the problems. And this is one of the issues that seed investment in our region is difficult because the seed investors, they don't get an exit. It's not like in Silicon Valley, you have a culture where Series A could, provide some liquidity to the early stage. In our region is a bit difficult. So people are not incentivized to invest. So number one, provide liquidity to the early stage investors. And we are looking into a project where they're not raising money, they're just tokenizing the cap table. So it makes it easier to manage and provide potential exit. Some companies want to go through the IPO route, some of them they don't, especially because of the compliance and reporting requirements. So that's part of what, the tokenization of equity, providing access to liquidity to the early stage investors. That's the main thing. And of course, having the ability to raise money from multiple jurisdictions. Most of the structures that we do are very traditional. So it's just like you're raising money as an equity and then the token as a bonus or a benefit on top of it. So why they're doing it, they're trying to raise money from different regions, not because they cannot raise. We have a company in the US, vaccine company. They don't want to be only stuck to the US. They're raising money globally because they believe they want to be a global company, not a US company, especially in this particular scenario. Some want to provide access to the early stage investors to have an exit or some sort of liquidity event. And some of them are looking at it to manage better, especially the small companies with a bigger number of shareholders. Those who went through syndication, some sort of angel investment or crowd. Sometimes we do a syndication where, let's say, 50 investors join in an SPV. So they want to remove the complexity of multiple layers and having more shareholders done through tokenization and managing that is good. And of course, the promise of secondary listing and trading and later on automated dividend distribution. But I tell people that don't focus on it now. It will come later on when the whole technology stack is developed and ready.
That's a great approach. Now, I wanted to ask you, since I met you and I saw your picture on WhatsApp, you standing next to some peculiar aircraft that kind of looked to me like an unmanned or, self-flying, maybe aerial taxi. I'm not sure. Tell me more about what this is and if you can fly those and what is the story there?
So that particular company is one of the investments that we made. It didn't do well, unfortunately, for various reasons. I mean, as you know, in the startups, so many good and bad stories. That aircraft is a manned aircraft, is not a drone. And it's a category called gyrocopters. Gyrocopters is it's a hybrid between a helicopter and a fixed wing, and it was invented before the helicopters. So the helicopter, the blade rotates, so the engine rotates the blade, creates a downward push of air, and creates the lift. And the fixed wing, you need to have a runway, and the air comes underneath the wing, and the lift is upward. The air is carrying the aircraft. The gyro is actually similar to a fixed wing. So it is a fixed wing. The only thing that these wings are rotating, and they're not rotating by engine, they're rotating by air. So these blades you see it at the top, they're not motored. So, need a runway. The lift, the air will rotate them, and it creates the lift upward. So because the blades are auto rotation, as they say it in the industry, is rotating by the air, it doesn't consume lots of fuel. It's very efficient. And it's the only aircraft that can fly very low because there is no wind going downward. It's going upwards. It's not a helicopter. So you could fly like 1 feet above the ground. It's good for movie production. And yes, you can fly it safely. It's the safest aircraft. It doesn't crash. Without the engine, you can land, because you don't need the engine. The air is rotating the blade. So it's a very exciting piece of thing. But again, it's one of the industries I was involved in at one point of time.
When can I get one?
They're available everywhere. In Europe, there are so many different companies. In the US, it's an ultralight aircraft, and it takes less than 40 hours, I think 20 or let's say 40 hours to get trained. Very easy, easier to learn to fly than driving a car, by the way. We can arrange something in Germany or Austria or
I am super interested.
It could become one of the future of aviation. One of the things why these small aircrafts don't take time because of the lack of manpower in the control towers for the aviation.
Yeah.
And maybe the blockchain with AI will come with a solution where these different aircrafts talk to each other and navigate the best optimal path.
Exactly.
And then you have less dependency on the control towers, and then you will see lots of them flying around.
I heard that there was a startup that created kind of this decentralized network for flying towers control, right? When they talk to each other and in a decentralized way. So I personally think this is the future, and I can't wait for it to happen and fly my own. So that's why I was very excited when I saw that picture. Anyway, thank you so much. Thanks for joining me on the Block Solid podcast today, Mohammed. It was great having you on. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or by visiting our website at solidblock.co/podcast. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to rate and review and spread the word. And thanks for listening. See you next time.